Hello friends, it is Stasia and welcome back to my channel. So today, based on the title, obviously, it should be fairly close to the release date of Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is supposed to be coming out on June 20th, so hopefully that is accurate. And yeah, so today we will be reviewing Business or Pleasure. We're going to do it CAWPILE style. If you don't know what CAWPILE is, it is basically an acronym for characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. So we're gonna go through those 7 categories, and then I'm gonna give them a score from 1 to 10. We're gonna get the average of all of those, and depending on where it lands will tell me how much stars it should have been rated. So we're gonna go ahead and go with that. First, I'm going to give you guys a quick synopsis on the book, and then I'll give you the rating that I gave it with like my heart, and then we're gonna go through CAWPILE. So, Business or Pleasure basically follows Chandler and Finn. Chandler is a ghostwriter, so she basically writes books for celebrities or other people to put under their name, but she like actually wrote it. That's what a ghostwriter is. And Finn is a C-list actor who is best known for his role in like a werewolf show where he was like the nerdy character, but it's been like a decade or something since it last aired, and since then he hasn't had like as many profound roles, like memorable roles. So they, in the beginning of the book, accidentally have a one-night stand, and then the next day Chandler goes to meet with Finn and his agent, whatever they're called, saying that they want her to ghostwrite his memoir. But he gave her a fake name, so she didn't know who he was until she showed up to the meeting, and she's dead set on saying no. She's like, obviously I know this guy a bit more intimately, so I should say no. But they basically give her an offer that she can't refuse, and she ends up ghostwriting this book. With this book, she is following Finn to like all of these different like conventions that he's attending for his character and all of that stuff, while simultaneously gathering information for the book that she's going to write. But their one-night stand is a bit awkward, and when Chandler comes out and tells Finn how she actually felt about their one-night stand, Finn is determined to make it better. So they make a deal that when they are not working on conventions or things for Finn's book, Chandler is going to help Finn in the satisfaction realm, to help him be better. So that's basically the plot and what happens. So I personally gave this book 3.5 stars. That's how it felt to me after reading it. Nothing necessarily bad, nothing that super stood out for me either. So we're gonna go through CAWPILE and see if that stacks up, or if it should have been rated higher or rated lower. I've not done the CAWPILE for it yet, so I'm going to give you guys my ratings as we go through them and how I feel about them, explain a little bit why I felt that way, and then we'll do the math and see where we end up. So I'm gonna put this here. Okay, so we will be discussing this book, Business or Pleasure. So the first one is characters. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I actually gave them an 8. I did enjoy the characters. Chandler is very funny, but she's also very, what is the word? Deflective. So she didn't talk about herself a lot, so I kind of wish that we got a bit deeper from Chandler. Finn was very comfortable with Chandler, so he was like an open book, which I guess he had to be considering she was writing his memoir. So, is it called a memoir? I'm pretty sure it's called a memoir. But yeah, so he was pretty open. We got a lot about Finn. He was hesitant at first, but I wish that we got a bit more of Chandler. But overall, I really enjoyed the characters. They were funny. They had good banter. Yeah, so I gave them an 8. There obviously is room for improvement, but overall, I did pretty much enjoy their aspect. Next, we have Atmosphere, which I gave a 7. I really loved seeing Finn at the conventions. The only thing is that this book is only told from Chandler's point of view. I wish we got some chapters from Finn so that we could see how he felt on the inside about like the conventions and meeting the fans and all of that stuff. But I did love seeing him on the panels and like that entire atmosphere. And obviously when they weren't at the panels or conventions, they were in different states traveling to go to all of these conventions, and then in the bedroom. So those are basically the atmospheres, would be in the bedroom or at the convention. And I really liked seeing, I guess from the outside looking in, since we only got Chandler's point of view, I liked seeing the atmosphere of the conventions and how the fans like dedicated to dressing up and all of that fun stuff. So I actually like the atmosphere. I gave that a 7. Obviously it did get repetitive because there's only so much you could do at conventions. So after a while they all kind of become the same thing. But overall, liked it. Next we have Writing, which I gave an 8. This kind of goes back to what I was saying with the atmosphere. It got repetitive in her thoughts. It's like, okay, here's Finn again, meeting his fans. And then, yeah, so it got repetitive in that aspect with the writing, because it was basically same situation, but a different place. So, yeah, because they're traveling from convention to convention. So they find themselves at the convention. Then they go back to the hotel or whatever, wherever they're staying. And they go work on the bedroom skills if they have like time or whatever. So it got a bit repetitive there, but the writing was very easy to get through. I didn't find myself struggling. It was easy enough to read that I didn't mind reading it. I feel like I got through it pretty quickly, but yeah, so I mean overall the writing, it was there, but it just got repetitive at some point because you're like, okay, well we know like when we get to the convention, this is what she's gonna see, this is how he's gonna feel, blah blah blah. So it kind of got a bit much. Yeah, so I gave that an 8. Next we have Plot, which is actually going to be my lowest rating. I gave it a 6. It was very, very slow burn. And this is my first book by Rachel Lynn Solomon. So I don't know if that's just how she writes and how, you know, how she writes her romance. But I wanted more from the characters. Obviously, there was a lot of spice because of their situation and goal with like the teaching aspect. But I felt like there wasn't enough romance. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I wanted more from the characters falling and stuff like that. But every time they would fall, Chandler would pull back. And it was like a constant cycle of that. So I wanted a bit more plot-wise. And then in the end, when things do get resolved, because it is a happily ever after, I felt like we didn't get enough time with the characters being happy together. I felt like most of the book, we were working up to this really big thing that only lasted a couple chapters. So I wish that we had more of them together, since I thought that this was a romance. So there was a very big lead up and not as big of a payoff, in my opinion. Like for me, that's how I felt. But yeah, so I feel like the plot could have been done better. Maybe it could have been different if there was dual point of view. But overall, the plot was the thing that kind of lacked for me. Very slow burn, which I really don't mind. I don't mind a slow burn. And since there was spice throughout the book anyways, even though they never confessed to any feelings or anything like that, I felt like you could have got away with a slow burn. But the payoff and like hardly seeing them happy, I didn't. Then it made the plot leading up not as worth it for me. Next we have Intrigue, which I gave an 8. I loved the concept of a ghostwriter and her client, like obviously peeling back the layers together, and from there you kind of start to fall, realize that there's more to this person than you thought. So I really liked it. Like I was very intrigued by that. I loved when they had conversations, when they were talking about like Finn's past and how he felt about things, and how he wanted to get rid of like this stigma because he has OCD. So they also talk about that. So I loved seeing like that, and also like the stigma of needing to play the same character because he's in the situation where he got a nerdy character role, and then that's pretty much all he got. Like he was never like big star. He got very like basic roles, like the same thing over and over. So I liked the conversation of that and how he actually felt about that. And yeah, so the intrigue was there. It was just like the execution that wasn't. But I did like it. I was very intrigued. I wanted to know what they were going to uncover next, especially since they would kind of like hint like, oh, this kind of happened, and then later on they would go like deep dive into it, and we could see like how he was really feeling and what he really wanted to put into this book. And yeah. Next we have Logic, which I gave a 7, and this is basically because they were adults always in the same place, but they never had actual conversations. You could tell that there's feelings pretty early on, but they never talk. I feel like if they had those conversations like adults would, especially like knowing they're always going to be together for like the next like 3 months or whatever, it wasn't logical to me to not want to express that in some way. And I felt like it would have came out earlier. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, so I gave Logic a 7. Mainly because they never really had the conversations that needed to be had. If they did, then I felt like the plot would have gone better because they would have had more time together to discover these feelings. But as adults, they kind of just ran away. I feel like my view on like communication is very skewed because I met my husband very young, so I never really had the experience of being an adult running away from my feelings, I guess you could say. So like I felt like as adults they should have been able to sit down. They sat down and talked a lot, but never about the things that should have been talked about, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyways, I gave Logic a 7, and that's what it is. The last one is Enjoyment, which I also gave a 7 for a mix of logic and plot, with the whole thing of just constantly waiting for something to happen, and then when it did happen, I felt like the payoff wasn't enough for me. And then there was the whole thing about never having the important conversations. But obviously my enjoyment is higher. I mean, it's pretty high, like with a 7, because the spice kind of gets you through it. I just wish that there was more conversation with the spice that was being given, because obviously they work in the bedroom. They worked great in the bedroom. Like you could tell that there was definitely that connection there, but no one wanted to breach the subject of what was actually happening. Like that it wasn't just like lessons sort of vibes, but like you could tell it wasn't. I don't know. But yeah, so Enjoyment was a 7. So to recap, we had characters at 8, atmosphere at 7, writing at 8, plot at 6, intrigue at 8, and then logic and enjoyment both at 7. So we're going to add that all up. So the total is 51. Divide that by 7 and we get 7.2. So in the ranking system, 7.2 is actually a 4-star. 3-star ends at 6.9 and 4 stars is 7 to 8.9. So I feel like with a 7.2 rating, I was pretty on par with a 3.5. It's probably like more like 3.25, but that's fine. So I feel I was pretty on par with how I felt about the book in the end, and if I were to break down the rating, giving it a 3.5. So at the end, it did make sense that Business or Pleasure got a 3.5 rating from me. Do I think you should pick it up? Yes. It was still like fun to read. So I definitely do think that if this is something that intrigues you, you should definitely pick it up. Like I said, this was my first Rachel Lynn Solomon book, so I'm not sure if this is just her style in writing romance with the whole slow burn situation. But yeah, I mean, I still think it's worth reading if it's something that intrigues you with the whole ghostwriter, C-list actor sort of vibes. But yeah, definitely steamy, so it didn't let up there. Like, the steam was there. It was just more of like the whole romance conversation that didn't happen as much for me. But 3.5 isn't a bad rating at all. Will I go back and read Rachel Lynn Solomon's other work? Probably. Also, early on in the book, they mention a like radio show, and I'm pretty sure that was like in reference to her other book, The X Talk. So, you know, there is that, little cameos. There could have been other cameos that I've missed, but since I've never read her other books, I didn't know. But overall, 3.5. I do still think it's worth reading. So if it's something that interests you, definitely pick it up. Not sure when this is coming out, whether the book will already be out, but if it is before June 20th, go ahead and pick it up. If it's after, go ahead and pick it up. It's out in the world, hopefully. But yeah, so that is all from me for today for reviewing Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. If you want more like sit down videos like this, let me know. I've done a couple like rapid reviews, and I'll leave the playlist down below and up above if you do want to check more out. But like I said, that is it from me today. So you can like, comment, and subscribe down below if you'd like. All of my socials and anything mentioned will be in the description as always. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!